Good morning, all. My name is Ellie Taggart. There is one fundamental element of any story that an author will undoubtedly adhere to well before the novel had even begun unfurling in their minds. This is, of course, the syntax or sentence structure, which is predefined by common grammatical rules. As writers, we are taught these ways of structure in order to communicate effectively to our readers and to write in such a way that the majority understand our text. However, what happens when these rules are broken? Can this be intentionally manipulated by an author? How do authors attempt this while still conveying their text's intended meaning? And what is the purpose of this grammatical deviation? Today I will be unpacking the somewhat niche but effective literary device of the disruption of syntax through intentional grammatical errors, specifically in the 2010 novel Room by Emma Donoghue. Donohue's novel follows the story of a young boy, Jack, and his ma, as she is referred to in the novel, who were held captive in Room, a bunker-like shed in the garden of their captor, Old Nick, which is what they refer to him as in the book. The complexity of this story lies in the fact that Jack is 5 and therefore unaware of the fact that his mother has been kidnapped and that he is the product of a sexual assault, which is what the first half of the book focuses on, or that there is an outside world that he has been deprived of. The second half of the book focuses on life after Room, and the integration of Jack and Ma back into a rapidly changing society. Whilst I will not name all of Donohue's awards that she received for this novel, I will, however, draw your attention to the fact that in a question and answer session on the website Goodreads, she stated, "I don't have a particular reader demographic in mind, gender, age, nationality, etc." And therefore this book has won awards across several categories, such as being named an honour book in the Canadian Library Association's Canadian Young Adult Book Award and the Hughes and Hughes Irish Novel of the Year. This could be because of the versatility of the text and its universally recognisable point of view. The book is interestingly communicated through the first-person point of view of Jack, and so therefore we, as the reader, get an unfiltered look into his perspective on the world, similar to that of Christopher John Francis Boone in the Curious Case of the Dog in the Nighttime. So this grammatical deviance can be broken down into several categories. The first being the addition of ed at the end of a present action as if it was past tense. This misuse of grammar can be seen in the quote, "Our friend Grace wins the race" on page 87. This device of taking the present and converting it to the past doesn't particularly make sense to a reader, but certainly makes sense makes the sentence sound jarring and uneducated. And this is due to the word wind instead of the sentence saying won the race. The purpose of tense is to indicate the time of an action. However, Donoghue aims to do the opposite to make the speech patterns of Jack and therefore his character seem out of place for readers. This is evident in the quote on page 201, where Jack says, "I find it a really big box." In this quote, Donoghue utilizes this jarring device to not only reinforce his age, but to reveal that whilst Jack is educated by Ma, he lacks the same vital knowledge that we as educated human beings have. On page 214, where Jack says, "I didn't know she knowed word salads." This quote clearly plays on the fact that he knows the word no, and the context in which the word sits, but Ma hasn't been able to teach him the word new, therefore revealing his limited vocabulary, which will be covered in the next point. So we, as a reader, understand that he's not well versed with past tense of words. This technique reminds audiences of the disparity between children of Jack's age on the outside and his lack of formal education on the inside of Room. Donoghue included this choice after listening to her 5-year-old son's strange grammar. So syntax is usually quite regimented, however Donoghue uses the second technique to break this down. In the piece, Jack has learnt his speaking from the TV in Ma and therefore picks up certain words, without knowing the proper meaning or rules defining where it should go. In her piece, grammatical sentences have an inclusion of unnecessary words. In quotes such as page 192's, "Please may you have me more pancakes," and page 62's, "I put the rest in the tub for not waste," phrases such as "may you have me" and "not waste" are what we know as incorrect grammar, but to Jack make perfect sense. Because of his lack of correct wording, Jack is segregated from the other characters as he lacks communication skills and fails to understand that others may not understand his simplified English. By including extra words, Jack's sentences lack confidence and therefore credibility. On page 223, this sequence occurs. I want to see Bronwyn. May you please, may you please, may you go us please to the kid place where the kids and Bronwyn, my cousin, are, I said to the driver. He doesn't hear me. In this quote, it is clear that Jack is attempting to communicate with the driver, a person from the outside. However, the driver ignores his attempts at communication due to his strange way of talking. This language that he uses feels almost there, but leaves Jack powerless in a complicated world. The final grammatical technique that was played on was the incorrect use of proper nouns. So proper nouns are usually defined as the capitalization of a name of a person, place, or an object. However, Donahue has intentionally provided the proper noun with a separate purpose. This is, as context for the book, Jack has grown up with only two sources of interaction, which were Ma and old Nick, who he is hidden from most of the time. So to counter this, he has created friends out of everyday objects in room. This is evident in the quote on page 49, I'm still in wardrobe, it's all dark. Ma didn't bring me into bed yet, in which wardrobe and bed are capitalized and the word the is excluded from before these words. This technique was included to make Jack relatable in the sense that he just wants interaction of some kind, but also distances us as the reader because of his jarring speech. What I mean by this is that whilst we sympathise with him, we also understand that capitalising objects and giving them the same importance as human beings is quite strange. On page 64, is the quote, it's darkened skylight now. I hope God will pull his silver face in. I get into my sleepy t-shirt. I wonder, am I dirty because I didn't have a bath? I try to smell myself. In wardrobe, I lie down in blanket, but I'm cold. This technique isolates the protagonist from the rest of the characters as his speech and thoughts stand out due to their idiosyncrasies. This is utilized to show what is important to him, as engagement is what we as humans thrive off. This effect is used sparingly towards the end of the book. For example, in the quote, I put the shell in my pocket, and a pink one and a black one and a long dangerous one called a razor shell. On page 292. It is clear that despite Jack's knowledge of his ownerships of the objects, he is no longer giving it the same importance as he gives to names towards the end of the book, such as Grandma and Stepper, which is mostly where the capital letters lie in the end of the book. This is manipulated to reveal that as the book progresses, he is understanding more of the world and therefore his grammar improves. A conversation that is crucial to the text is when a conversation between Ma and Jack arises on page 320, with Jack starting the conversation. He says, "You don't think so?" He says, "It's not room now." She says, "You don't think so?" She sniffs. "It used to smell even staler. The door's open now, of course." Maybe that's it. Maybe it's not room if doors open. In this instance, the technique is used to create a poetic reflection on the text and Jack's personal journey, creating a moment of sense of this capitalization as it draws to your attention the importance placed on these objects. This quote could be simplified to, there are many more important things in the world than room once the world is opened up to you, which is pretty close to Jack's statement. However, I feel that the only way that this could probably be expressed in a shorter amount of words would be in the way that Jack did describe it, so therefore his response is more adequate than the way most human beings would have thought. Jack successfully reveals that he now understands the significance of freedom and the situation that they are in. On the first slide of this, is the beginning of my story, and throughout these next 4 slides are parts of my story. These don't, all of this will not be deconstructed. I will just be taking out certain elements of it to deconstruct and talk about how they relate to the addition to be able to add your own techniques into your writing that they've used in this. So my piece is called We Came Here on the Waves, and usually in my own writing I don't write with grammatical deviance intentionally. However, as I began working on a piece that was centered around a young asylum seeker moving to Australia and learning about both a different country and a digital world, I found that this literary device or misuse of it worked perfectly to convey my protagonist's confusion and initially isolate him from the other characters. In this children's piece titled We Came Here on the Waves, I decided to use all 3 techniques found in Room, which I will now deconstruct. So in the quote on page 1, it's the first book my dad ever gave me, and it'll always be my favourite one. It is important to know that gived is the wrong tense in which the word is gave. The overall effect of the grammatical change in the novel is to isolate the protagonist from the other characters, both literally and figuratively, by drawing attention to his nonconformity. Therefore, in your own work, if you're aiming to create an education separation or to reinforce a barrier between characters, this misuse of grammar is an effective tool that brings the character to attention. This can be achieved by making the character confuse the past tense with present tense. In the quotes on page 3 and page 8, Ishmael gets to go to learn school in a building so tall it scrapes the sky, but I choose to pick Welcome, which is English, because there was no other Australian option. It is clear that the learn school and choose to pick are unnecessary words to put together, and these words work by themselves, but together they reveal Amir's lack of understanding of basic grammatical rules despite his broader grasp of the English language. To imply the technique of the intentional inclusion of extra words to your own work, you would add a small word in the wrong context to make the character sound unsure. This would be a word that would only break the normal structure of a sentence but not fully disrupt the scene. And this would then create a lack of authority for the main character, which is easily applicable to most texts. On page 3, the quote, because I couldn't bring over the bad men, I have decided to write my own book. It's about me, Mum, and Ishmael. Reveals that to Amir the most important things in his life are the bad men, which is his favourite book, books in general, and his family. If you were to utilise this technique of incorrect use of proper nouns in your own work, you would have to give importance to objects that are central to the characters and refer to the object without the word the in the front of it. This would relay the fact that your character is isolated in terms of their understanding of the world and that they are naive. I also included a moment in which, despite Amir's poor grammar, his intention made sense in the quote on page 2. Dad was sick, but it's okay because he's safe now in a place called quarantine. I couldn't find it on a map, which is probably a good thing, because then he can't be frightened by any of the bad men. In this, Amir uses what he knows about the world to comprehend what happened to his father. To apply this to your own text, you would need to utilize the naivety of your character and choose a word that, despite your character's lack of understanding of it, the reader would then understand. Therefore, grammatical deviance is a key literary device that can be applied to a piece easily through simple changes in word structure, sentence structure, and in proper capitalization. Thank you for listening.